So I did make a small title change since I had put this up there, mainly to reflect the change in the name of the PDW system to analytics platform system. But that doesn't change really the content that I'm presenting here today. Just changes some of the initial setup. So what we're here to talk today about is understanding data movement in the analytics platform system. And I like to talk about APS and specifically the PDW pieces because it's just a really cool way to do data warehousing. I get blamed quite a bit when I go to the PassMN meetings here in Minnesota that I just won't shut up about PDW, that I see it as the solution for pretty much all of your data warehousing needs, and I'm not really going to deny that. Let's get started here with a little bit of background on myself. Here we go. My name is Jason Straight. I am a Microsoft Certified Master MVP with SQL Server. Been working with this stuff for quite a long time. Actually started off on my very first project doing data warehousing before I moved into doing DBA and OLTP type work. And so the stuff that we can do here with the APS and with the PDW is really going back to my roots, and it's some of the stuff that really kind of excites me because you can take the data that you have, your terabytes, your tens of and hundreds of terabytes, and start to do really fast, cool analytics on the data without having to worry about designing your system, more worried about or focusing on bringing value out of your platform. And so, as I said, I started off with data warehousing, and one of the things that I found is that data warehousing isn't exactly easy. Sure, it's just facts and dimensions, but there's more to it than that. And I remember working on systems where, you just build the whole thing up, you throw 10 gigs on it, and this is, 10 gigs about 12 years ago was quite a bit of data. But you throw your data on there, and it just doesn't want to work. And since then, since the 10 gigs, things have been growing quite a bit. And now just an average, everyday run-of-the-mill data warehouse, I'm seeing is in the 1 to 3 terabyte range. That's kind of like the average middle of the road with most of the customers I talk to. And that's a big change from a few years back where people weren't really talking about a terabyte. And going forward, people are going to continue to talk about larger and larger data warehouses because the data that's out there is just growing so quickly, and the ability to keep and retain it is really catching up to the analytics that we want to do. And that's kind of brought things to this point where things are about to tip over. And that's where analytics platform system comes in, because we don't generally, if you've got the kind of background that I have, I'm not a hardware guy. I understand how the hardware all comes together, but I really just want to build out cool solutions and get things just working the way that they need to be. And I don't want to spend a lot of time worried about, is my network packet big enough? It's 4096. Do I need to make it 8,100 and something or other? Or can I just work with the system as it is, put something out there and build it up and just get it to work? And that's really where Analytics Platform System comes in. It gives you that ability to just work with SQL Server. And so to talk about data movement, there are two things I want to talk about before I get to talking about data movement. Because data movement is something that happens as a result of the architecture of the Microsoft Analytics Platform System, or APS, and it's one of those things that you need to have a good understanding for, just like on just a typical SQL Server implementation, that you need to have an understanding for how does a sort work within an execution plan, how does a hash or a merge function operate within an execution plan. Data movement within APS and inside the PDW regions is really just that kind of the same function. Is it parallelism or is it data movement? Those are the kinds of things that happen within APS, and that's another area of understanding that you need to have. And so before I get into the data movement and those pieces, though, what I found is that a lot of people don't know much about the analytics platform system, so I'm going to do a bit of an introduction, keep that fairly brief, and then explain how data is distributed, because if you don't understand how it's distributed or why it's distributed, then it's hard to understand why data moves. And then we'll talk about data movement and the types of data movement and the things that you need to watch for, because data movement's not necessarily evil, just like parallelism, not necessarily evil, but you need to understand what it's doing. And so let's talk about the Microsoft Analytics Platform System. Now, APS has been around for a number of years. Now, it hasn't always been called APS. Up until recently, it was called just Parallel Data Warehouse. Parallel Data Warehouse is actually on the APS system, just a region within there. Now, APS and PDW is a hardware-software solution, so it's something you just buy. You know, it's like a big toaster. I want to toast some bread, or I want to toast up some data. I don't have to go through and get some wiring. I don't have to figure out how much power to put through it. I don't have to figure out what kind of buttons I need on it. It just kind of shows up and it works. Well, it doesn't show up. You actually have to buy it. But if you do buy it, they bring it in, they cart it in, they plug it in, then you start just deploying databases on it. It's kind of that easy, besides the fact that the network people have to give like IPs and stuff like that. But what APS brings you is just an appliance solution, things where you don't have to worry about maintenance of the platform. You don't have to worry about upgrades and all that kind of stuff. You know, if you just want it to come in and work, great solution, because that's what it does. Now, within APS, there's this Parallel Data Warehouse region. Parallel Data Warehouse region, this is where a lot of the data movement happens, is an MPP solution based on and built on top of SQL Server. It has a shared nothing architecture, which basically means that down to the disk level, the data is distributed in a way that CPU and disk and memory has isolation to prevent things like parallelism, where if you have a query that's running parallelly across your platform, so say it's using 5 CPU today, and tomorrow it's using 10 CPU, and the day after that it's using 15, and then it's using 1. That's a lot of variability within a single query that you just don't know, am I going to get the performance today, or am I going to get the performance tomorrow? Do I have to go in and tune it? Do I have to engineer it? Do I have to make sure I play around with DLP? Do I have to do a lot of the parallelism type tricks to make sure that it does the right kinds of things? With the shared nothing architecture, it's going to be just broken down to the point where